Hey everyone. What happened last Saturday in Washington, D.C. didn't make headlines, but it should have. It started with a sea of voices chanting, "You don't represent us," and ended with Donald Trump shaking hands with a college student who showed up just to protest him. There were no cameras rolling, no press releases, no spin. Just two people, on opposite sides of everything, meeting in the one place no one expected, somewhere in the middle. If you believe that real change doesn't always come from shouting, but from listening, hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories that challenge what we think we know. The story you're about to hear is entirely fictional. It is inspired by the times we live in, but any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. And yet, it might feel real. Because in a country more divided than ever, what if this actually happened? Let us take you there. If you believe that real change doesn't always come from shouting, but from listening, hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories that challenge what we think we know. It was just after noon when the first wave of chants echoed off the buildings in downtown D.C. Signs lifted above the crowd like sails in the wind. "We are not for sale, you don't represent us, we're drowning in debt." 100 causes, one target. Everyone in that square had something to protest, and for many of them, that someone was Donald J. Trump. Maya had been there since the morning. She didn't plan to lead anything, didn't want attention. But her sign stood out. "You took my future and sold it." It wasn't a slogan for her. It was personal. Federal aid cuts had forced her to take on 2 jobs just to stay in school. Her younger brother needed daily care, and her mother's health had become a fragile balancing act of pills and missed payments. Politics had stopped being a theory and become something that lived in their fridge, in their bills, in every sleepless night spent doing homework beside hospital paperwork. And now here she was, one in a sea of thousands, students, parents, teachers, nurses. Some were angry, some were tired. All were hopeful that someone somewhere was listening. Then something shifted. A black SUV rolled to a stop on the far edge of the square. At first it barely drew attention. But when the back door opened and a tall man stepped out, heads began to turn. No one expected him. There was no press, no motorcade, no polished entrance. Just Trump, walking toward the crowd like he didn't need permission. At first there was confusion, then disbelief. Then the chants returned, sharper now, louder. The air cracked with boos. Signs pointed like weapons. Maya stood still. He walked through the noise, unmoved, not smug, not defiant, just steady. His face was unreadable, his posture calm in a storm of rage. He didn't scan the crowd or react to the chants. He kept his eyes ahead, until, unexpectedly, he stopped, right in front of her. No words were exchanged, no performance. He looked at her sign for a long moment, then at her. Not past her, not around her, at her. And she looked back. In her head, 1,000 thoughts fought for space. All the late-night arguments she'd rehearsed, all the anger, the fear, the frustration. But none of them came forward. There was no yelling, no bravado, just 2 people standing in the middle of a moment that wasn't supposed to happen. Behind them, the shouting dimmed, unsure of what exactly they were watching. Maya didn't lower her sign. She didn't speak. But something passed between them. Something unplanned, undeniable. And then, just like that, the moment moved forward. But it had already changed something. The air between them felt strangely still, thick but quiet. Around them, the crowd was still shifting, unsure of what it was witnessing. The chants hadn't stopped completely, but they'd lost their rhythm, like a song whose beat had collapsed under its own weight. Maya could feel the pressure of it all, the cameras, the stares, the expectations. Her heart was racing, not from fear, but from something harder to name, confrontation without armor. Trump stood less than a meter away. No one blocked him. No one spoke for him. He hadn't come with a microphone or a plan, just his presence. And for a man known for his volume, the silence was louder than anything else. Maya tightened her grip on the sign. It didn't feel bold anymore. It felt honest, fragile even. A statement that had lived in her chest long before she'd written it down. She hadn't meant it for an audience, certainly not for him. And yet here he was, reading it, not reacting, just absorbing. For a second, longer than it should have lasted, they just stood there. No words, no signal, just breath and space. The man she'd only ever seen behind podiums and headlines now looked entirely human, older, tired maybe, but not small. There was nothing small about him, not in stature, not in presence. And yet, he didn't loom. He didn't try to. He looked at her, not through her, and something about that made the moment feel heavier. Maya had expected anger, a speech, a smirk, anything, but not stillness. Behind them, the energy shifted again. Phones hovered, voices lowered. Even the police on the edge of the square had paused, hands resting just slightly away from their radios. Still, no one moved. Trump's gaze dropped again to the sign. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Recognition? Regret? Maya couldn't tell. Maybe he couldn't either. Then he did something unexpected. He took a step forward. Not toward her, but toward acknowledgement. Just enough to close the space, but not enough to threaten it. And then he nodded. Not dramatically, not performatively. A subtle, almost imperceptible gesture. Maya didn't nod back. She didn't need to. Because in that second, she realized something no chant could express. This moment wasn't about who was right. It was about the fact that, for once, someone stayed still long enough to listen. And then, quietly, Trump extended his hand. Gasps fluttered through the crowd like wind across dry leaves. The tension cracked, but didn't break. Maya looked at the hand. She didn't rush, didn't flinch. She knew the meaning this would carry, the headlines, the split reactions, the accusations, the praise, all of it. And still, she reached out, a brief shake, not for cameras, not for power, just two people on opposite sides of a chasm, reaching across for one impossible second. It wasn't a solution, it wasn't even a conversation, but it was something. And sometimes, in a country starving for something real, that's enough to stop the noise, if only for a moment. For a heartbeat, the city seemed to pause. Maya and Trump stood with hands briefly clasped, then released. The moment passed quickly. No fireworks, no applause, just an overwhelming, disorienting stillness, as if everyone around them forgot what they were supposed to do next. Then came the murmurs, first from the front of the crowd, then rippling outward, questions wrapped in confusion, judgment, awe. Some eyes were wide with disbelief, others narrowed with suspicion. Phones captured it from every angle. The protest signs no longer pointed at a single target. Now they hovered in midair, uncertain of their purpose. A woman in a puffer coat lowered her sign. A man with a megaphone hesitated before lifting it back to his lips. Even the chants didn't return right away. They had lost their momentum. Maya didn't move. She didn't look back at the cameras or to the crowd. Her eyes were fixed on the space where he had stood. The SUV was already rolling away, blending into city traffic as if nothing had happened. But something had. She felt it in her chest, tight and buzzing. Not pride, not guilt. Something stranger. A quiet discomfort that came from having expectations turned inside out. James was still filming, but not speaking. The live stream was overflowing with comments, some in support, some in rage, some simply confused. Screenshots spread online within minutes. One image, Maya and Trump mid-handshake, went viral in under 15. No filter, no context, just the frame. The headline wrote itself. Opinions followed like wildfire. Student faces the man who hurt her and extends her hand. A moment of respect or a photo op. Weakness or wisdom. The truth didn't seem to matter as much as the reaction. Some called her brave, others called her a sellout. Some saw peace, others saw betrayal. Some turned her into a symbol, Others tried to erase her altogether. By sunset, she was trending, but none of the headlines captured what it actually felt like. The heat of 1,000 eyes, the impossible stillness in the middle of chaos, the hollow sound of judgment disguised as applause, the shame that followed something you didn't even regret. Back in the park, Maya sat on the cold edge of a stone planter, the sign still in her lap. She looked down at it, creased, ink faded from the cold and her grip. It still said the same thing, but it didn't feel the same anymore. A few people passed by her. Some gave her a look, some looked away. A few nodded. She couldn't tell which meant what anymore. Above her, a drone hovered, red light blinking. She had not changed the world, but something had changed in her. She wasn't sure what that meant yet, but she knew this much. What just happened would follow her far beyond that square. By the next morning, Maya's face was everywhere. News outlets had clipped the handshake. Editors had tightened it, slowed it down, added music, overlaid headlines. Social media fractured into its usual battle lines. Think pieces flooded in. Most of them never asked her what she thought. At home, the living room was quiet. Her brother watched her through the doorway, unsure whether to say something. Her mom didn't speak much either. She just made breakfast, slower than usual, like she was thinking harder than she let on. Maya didn't check the trending tab. She didn't read the comments. She sat in her room and held the sign one last time. It was creased now. The ink had run a little from her fingers. The message was still there, but something had shifted. Not the words, but what they meant to her. She didn't regret shaking his hand, but she didn't celebrate it either, because the truth was, it wasn't about the handshake. It was about the pause that came after. The moment where the noise dipped, and for once someone listened and someone spoke, and neither one yelled. Later that week, a local news crew reached out. They wanted her for a panel. She said no, but she wrote something instead, a post. I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't go there to make peace, but I also didn't go there to be part of the noise. I went because I was tired of being invisible. If a moment of eye contact, a breath of silence, a handshake, if that reminds even one person that listening still matters, then maybe it was worth it. Maybe. It was shared over 200,000 times in the first day. Still, she stayed quiet after that. No press tour, no podcast appearances, no interviews. She let the story do what stories do, fade, grow, shift, and settle. And what she chose next was simple. She got up, she went to class, she helped her mom with the bills, she studied harder, because sometimes the most radical thing you can do in a loud world is move forward quietly. And maybe that's why this story matters. Not because it ended in a victory, not because it made everyone agree, but because for once, just once, two people didn't choose noise. They chose to stand still and see each other. If this story made you feel something, even a little, drop a comment below. Hit like if you think listening is still more powerful than shouting. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to Twisted Tales, where stories aren't just told, they're felt. We'll see you in the next one.